My health has declined and I've neglected my family. Last night, I literally woke up in some sort of weird dream/nightmare trying to craft some items. Today, I'm going to tell you about my experience playing Path of Exile, being more than 3 months in and not having played any similar games, for example, Diablo before. Now, my background is I've been gaming since I was a small kid. My favorite games are role-playing and ARPG games. My favorite games prior have included things like Fallout series, Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. I loved Divinity Original Sin 2, Grim Dawn, and all sorts of other games, and even strategy games like StarCraft. Now, I find open-world role-playing games more immersive. However, I do find with ARPG games that I tend to finish them without it being a chore, whereas I get only so far in an open world role-playing game and I don't tend to finish it. So I wanted to choose an ARPG game to start streaming. Now, what I normally look for in games is complex progression, a lot to achieve, some good variety, and lots of complexity in choices. So that's why I'm probably drawn to those kinds of games. So to summarize my time in Path of Exile, what have I done? What have I achieved? I've spent 3+ months in the game. So I commenced a playthrough for a few weeks in something I call Streamer League, which is where you pick Trade League and get given most of your endgame gear and don't learn very much because essentially you're playing an action game where you haven't earned your gear, you don't understand what you've been clicking in your skill tree, and so you essentially run around the screen using right click to kill things. So that wasn't really a playthrough. I just learned, okay, I'm not going to accept gifts, and you know what? I'm actually interested in trying solo self-found, which is SSF, where you don't trade. You are essentially your own economy and you have to build and craft everything yourself. And what you find is what you've got. One of my community, Dried Chicken, created this build for me, an SRS Guardian build, which is a Summon Raging Spirit minion build. I wanted a minion build because I'd never done a minion build in any game before. I'd always picked like a two-handed melee build or archer or elemental type build. So this was really fun for me. I have recently completed my time in that character, achieved my goals. I got my 4 Void Stones, most of my Atlas unlocked, had a lot of fun, killed Cirrus as well by luck. Not pretending I'm a great player. That was a bit of a lucky one and a bit of a good build choice there. I've still got a long way to go, and my second playthrough is as a chieftain, a ground slam of Earthshaking one, and I love that build. It's just like this build where you play piano, you essentially charge up with these war cries, and then you slam the ground, and half the screen gets obliterated. However, my beautiful second character has been on hold since I was convinced into torturing myself by playing the Gauntlet Hardcore SSF event, which I'm currently midway through. My aim there is to get through all the acts, and I'm in Act 6. Well, what's unique to my experience is I commenced streaming and playing Path of Exile at the same time, which means I'm not going to have the same experience as maybe another player who wasn't streaming. So for example, I've had far more coaching than other players. I've had experts in the community on my stream, and they are just awesome. And can I take a small diversion to mention the Path of Exile community? Such a supportive community, always there willing to help, willing to troll, and willing to make fun of me. But I say that in the best way. I thought a really funny comment from one of them early on was, the Path of Exile community is lovely. They're so friendly to noobs and vicious to each other. So that's stuck in my mind, and I sort of chuckle when I see the robust arguments that sometimes occur. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I've had a different experience because of this. However, I've also had less time to research and take my time and do reading and looking into wikis than other players. I guess when you're streaming, you feel a natural pressure to keep the stream going. It may be a self-imposed pressure, but it is there, and I have therefore adjusted my learning style. In addition, the stream is always pushing me to do things that perhaps if I was on my own I wouldn't do. For example, I hate some of the boss fights, and my initial goal was to do 2 Void Stones, but I ended up getting 4, and then I was pressured into doing Cirrus, and then suddenly I had to do Gauntlet, and the list goes on. So I felt at times I had to constantly remind myself I'm playing a game, because the combination of complexity of Path of Exile with the constant pushing myself to do more makes me feel like I'm studying for some kind of final exam that's always the next day, rather than playing a game. So how has Path of Exile affected my life? Well, the jokes are true, everyone. If you heard rumors of Path of Exile breaking up families, it's possible. First off, I found my favorite game, possibly, of all time, and definitely my favorite ARPG of all time. My health has declined somewhat, and I've neglected my family. I've used every moment of spare time to stream and play, and I have only missed one day. And on that day, I did some serious video editing till like all hours of the Saturday night that it was. My health has declined because I've been sleeping later than before. I find myself dreaming, or rather having nightmares about Path of Exile most nights. This is not an exaggeration. Last night, I literally woke up, I would guess 5 a.m. in some sort of weird dream/nightmare trying to craft some items. And I've definitely neglected my family and have been working out how to un-neglect them and have had numerous complaints. But I have realized, on the plus side, guys, gaming is not dead. On the contrary. So what has surprised me about Path of Exile? I'd say the complexity surprised me. Of course, the famous skill trees. You've got the gear, the different ways of crafting, all the items. But let me not forget the mechanics. Wow. So my first impressions as a new player are the mechanics are like games in themselves. The best way I found to approach this is to take them one by one or two by two. So divide and conquer with the mechanics, but otherwise you can really feel overwhelmed. What else has surprised me is the fact that you can't see anything happening on screen, but yet experienced players think you can. And it's because they've accustomed to it. Like everything else in the game, the experienced player has grown with the game. But I myself am learning to take the game in bite-sized pieces, and you cannot see everything in the beginning. Things like how mechanical boss fights are took me by surprise. For example, I don't really love, or am not necessarily good at these sort of things naturally. I don't naturally love to jump out the way of this attack and memorize a certain pattern and jump back in on the fire. I don't find that as fun as crafting my character and blasting the hell out of things. But Path of Exile forces you to do this for bosses, and it's fine, and I've learnt, but in the beginning I wasn't sure there was hope for me. Dumb things I did as a new player. So one thing I did was not any research before starting, and I literally started the game. I had no idea about it. When I went to select my class, I then decided to research, and what I wanted to be was a slayer. That's all I knew, that you had to pick a duelist to be a slayer, and that's it. Other dumb things I did were wasting time on things like there are these rocks that are part of the game's lore that you click on and they just read some script, and I spent a long time trying to work out how to destroy these, what to do with these, and to no avail. Other things I did were things like assigning a skill gem but never using it because I was left clicking on my weapon, so I'd equip a gem and still go slash some things with my sword, not realizing I was never using the gem. Other dumb things I did were equipping like 4 main skill gems with no support gems and trying to alternately attack with these gems, exploring every corner of the map like I would in other games, and then coming back to zones, not realizing they were reset and exploring them all over again, collecting every unique before selling them because I had absolutely no stash tab space, and then overcompensating and buying every stash tab in existence because of my absolute trauma of being unable to put anything in my stash tabs. What I've really learned from the game, well, I've learned that there are great games out there. There are great game studios which care about games. Gaming is not dead. Not all games have been dumbed down, thankfully. I've learned that I'm not a great gamer. I am a good gamer, I believe, and I'm great at some things and not at others. And Path of Exile is probably not the most natural choice, but I am learning and becoming okay with them. So we shall see. I have learnt that you can get a lot better at seeing what is on screen. I have learnt that I absolutely love and enjoy crafting, because prior to this, I've never enjoyed crafting in other role-playing games. And I've learnt a lot about the game, the mechanics, the progression from acts to maps, and all the different fragments and the boss fights, etc., which I didn't think I would get a handle on for a long time. So what have I loved about the game? I've loved the variety and the complexity, the way that you can build so many combinations and types of builds, and the way it can keep you entertained for hours. I love the different mechanics as well that adds to the variety. I love the crafting and the different ways you can upgrade your gear. I love the fact that the game never really ends. And I love the gamba. So I love the fact that you might go into an area and hope that a certain item drops, hoping you might find a certain type of gear. I really love that. What don't I love? I don't love that there are so many third-party tools required for the game. Now, many people will say they're not required. Well, you know what? I can go dig a hole in my backyard with my fingers, and a shovel and tools are not required. I agree. But maybe we're not talking reasonably here. So if you want to play the game properly, you do need third-party tools. If you are going to play the game and farm high-level maps without a loot filter, good luck to you. You'll have a great time. I'll give you an example that constantly irks me. Something that you may not expect, which is that when you hover over a gem and you use Alt, you can see like what does quality and increasing the quality do for a gem. It's very clearly written there. But where does it write on the gem? What does increasing the level do? I don't personally find this a great experience, and I don't think it's necessary. I think there can be a lot done for the game, and there should have been a lot done. I don't believe that tutorials and any kind of guidance has been the focus of Path of Exile. I don't like the unnecessary complexity, so I don't like dumbing down of games. However, I don't like unnecessary complexity. So things like blocking attack damage, blocking spell damage, physical damage reduction, then you've got all sorts of other kind of defenses. They are different, but they don't need to be. Also, lastly, that the game is not optimized for performance, so it gets very, very heavy on your PC late game. Conclusion is, game is a masterpiece, and I love it. And yes, I will be playing Path of Exile 2. And if you want to find out more about how I rate this game, see my video, So I Recently Found Path of Exile.